the vaccine thing is very conclusive to me. I have a bunch of kids. I vaccinated some of my kids. I didn't vaccinate some of my kids. And, it's very conclusive to me, the side effects that I have seen.
You know what? There are going to be challenges with it, but that's just human nature. Whenever there's something new upon us, we don't like change.
And again, the issue is the government has too much involvement in vaccines. And therefore, when the government gets involved, you get crony capitalism, and vaccines are no longer developed for the good. They're developed for crony capitalism. Mm-hmm. So it's the money, man. Because Big Pharma is Big Pharma. Mm-hmm. This is in Texas. It's like 10 minutes down the street from my house in Texas. It says, homes for rent. Len, there's like 150 houses in this tract development, but they're not for sale. They're just for rent.
Whoa, that's a new one. Brand new. Whoa.
Yes.
Wow.
I will, next time I drive by it, I am going to
take a pic, man. You got to send that to me.
Welcome to the Family Office. Planning for the people who matter most.
Well, that might be a good opportunity too, because now maybe we don't need to go to Florida as much because there won't be as much travel options to Florida anymore. But recently, last week, Florida just ended child vaccine mandates. I'm all about this. I think this is a great thing. So Florida essentially is eliminating school vaccine requirements. It's the first state to do so. It's kind of weird to me to see Florida now. It's not weird, but it's interesting to see Florida, Len, because Florida went from this. Florida at one point was like, Florida's interesting because if you look at Florida almost was like California is now. You know what I mean? Florida was going in that direction where it was like this weird state, and you had the whole hanging Chad issues, and it was very left leaning, and it was a toss up. I mean. And now you see Florida's more intense than Texas when it comes to libertarian looking, and I think a lot of it has to do with Ron DeSantis. I think Ron DeSantis is very libertarian leaning, and he's got that attitude. I think a lot of people like him in Florida. They reelect him overwhelmingly, and now it's very cool to see that. What's your take on the vaccine mandate here in Florida and what that looks like? And do you think any other states are gonna model this like some wacky states follow wacky California?
Well, California has been on the forefront of a lot of legislation. Another conversation for another day. But with Florida, I have two almost contradictory viewpoints. So I believe that the purpose of a vaccination, especially for little kids, is important from the standpoint of like measles and mumps and chickenpox, because those are highly communicable diseases. And there's so many people that end up catching them that going to school could literally be walking into a classroom that's a tinderbox of all of these germs, because, kids, they're in close proximity of each other. They've got snot on their nose. They don't really wash their hands. They're touching the door and all of these different things. Those classrooms are petri dishes for germs. So on the one hand, I understand the need to have vaccinations for that. Now, on the flip side of that coin, I'm very much a believer in personal liberty. And I believe that if a parent elects not to have their child vaccinated, they should have the right to not have their child vaccinated. The challenge to that, somebody that would have an opposing viewpoint is that, well, if you decide not to vaccinate your child, why should my child be exposed to your child who decided not to get vaccinated? Well, to me, I look at it like this. Florida becomes a very good case study on this idea because you have two very strong opposing forces, the anti-vaxxer versus the pro-vaxxers. And I think this is a great opportunity for researchers to go in and do some scientific studies, hone in on Florida as a case study. You've got thousands and thousands of people, and you'll know which kids decided not to have their vaccinations very easy because there's you have an immunization records. And so look at this as a longitudinal study, which is a study year over year for at least 5 years, and you find out what the outcomes were. And at the end of that 5 years, if I'm another state like any other 40 of the 49 states, I would sit back, observe, see what happens. And if you started to notice that, if you look at the real numbers, because what will happen is you'll have the different media companies that will take individual cases and blow it up and make it feel like it's this issue that's widespread, and it's really not. And then you'll have the opposing media company that'll say, hey, XYZ school had no instances of, XYZ communicable disease. And so they'll spin it. Scientifically, you can look and find out if this is effective or not. So while I would personally want my kids and elect to have my kids have those specific vaccinations only in the beginning to prevent like polio and things that we've eradicated. But outside of that, if the next parent decides not to have their kid vaccinated, God bless you, man, because it last I checked, it's a free country and you can do what you want to do.
I think that what we see here is an opportunity to see just how, like, the democratic process or the republic process is supposed to work in America, right? And that you're supposed to allow states to incubate laws and legislation. And I think what Florida is doing is giving a very good example of how you're giving freedom of choice to people to make those types of administrative decisions. So, the vaccine thing is very conclusive to me. I have a bunch of kids. I vaccinated some of my kids. I didn't vaccinate some of my kids. And, it's very conclusive to me, the side effects that I have seen with vaccinations. It's very conclusive to me and what it has done. Additionally, with the healthcare providers that I have chosen to have for my children, and my children obviously are involved in this conversation as well, all my children have exemptions for vaccinations with their schools, so they don't need the vaccinations. I choose what vaccinations they get as they need them. Not like, here you go. Here's 17 vaccinations in one shot. You know what I mean? Like, that's just like crazy to me, because you're essentially this genetic mutation, right? I mean, whatever else is in those things, and we don't have long-term studies on how the COVID vaccine works and how it affected, what the efficacy is of it and what the side effects of it. So to me, I think you're seeing this process where people are allowed the choice to not have a vaccine. And I think that's great. And what's weird about it is that there are people in certain camps that freak out about it and go, oh my God, we're going to die. No, you're not going to die, because you could choose to have that vaccine. So you can go get it. I choose not to. So if I choose not to have that vaccine, that means, guess what? I'll get sick and you won't. So then you're good, right? And then by contrast, those are the same people that freak out about the fact that we allowed abortion to be a state issue instead of a federal issue, which is the way it should be, right? So in California, you can have an abortion, but in Texas, you can't. But you don't see all the people freaking out going, oh my God, you can have an abortion in California. You do see those people, but not to the extreme where you see them going, oh my God, you ended civilization and women's reproductive rights. No, you didn't. We just put it to the state level. So I think what we're seeing here is we're seeing good political, not want to say recourse, good political actions or good political flow, right? You're seeing the political system that is America's republic work. Now I know that if I want to not live in a place where vaccines are mandated on me by the government, which I don't think they should be, I just go to Florida. And now I'm on my way. And by contrast, if I want to live in a state that allows abortion, then I can't live in Texas. I got to live in California. That's the rules. That's the law. And that's the way it should be. I just think this is such an obvious thing. I don't know why more states don't do it. I get the epidemic issue, but to me, I think the COVID vaccine, Len, was such an atrocity in what was done with it, and it was forced on people, and now we're seeing such a negative ramification from it. But I am for like a tetanus vaccine or tetanus shot, the measles, the mumps. I'm for that stuff. If you're going to be in those areas and you're exposing yourself to it, you ought to do it. But here in America, the likelihood of you getting it, you're like, it's so unlikely for you to have it because you're in America. But of course, if you're going to travel abroad, I would do it. I would do it older, and I wouldn't subject my body to all of those vaccines at a young age. I would do it over time. I had them all, but I know I had all the ones like tetanus and all those stuff and whatever. I can't remember the last time I got any vaccine. I didn't do COVID vaccine. I didn't do any of it. In fact, with COVID, and I know this is a sensitive subject for a lot of people. I'm friends with a lot of people that are very sensitive around it. They're even sensitive about my viewpoint. But to me, it was like, look, I can only speak on what worked for me. I can't speak up. But for me, it was like, give me it as fast as I can. And we all got it. And we all got it fast. And that was it. It was over fast. Thank God. But again, we did that because we knew we didn't have any comorbidities. We didn't have any other extenuating medical circumstances. My mom, back then she's 77 now. She was in her early 70s, but she had type 2 diabetes. So I knew we didn't go near her until we knew what it was. And my mom got the COVID shot and all that stuff. And she still got COVID. And my father-in-law got COVID shot. And he still got COVID too. But at any rate, I think it's a good thing. I don't think that there's going to be any outbreak stuff. We haven't seen that. I don't think you're going to see any negative ramifications. I think there's a lot of people that don't get vaccines. Yeah, I don't.
I think there's going to be. I think that the ramifications are going to be. The first ones are going to be political. So, like, for example, I think what's going to happen is there's going to be a faction of people that say, hey, we want vaccinated classrooms where only kids go into this classroom if you're vaccinated. And if you're not vaccinated, you go into that classroom. I bet you there are going to be some parents at some school board meeting that will go and ask for that. And that school board meeting is definitely going to make the news. And there's going to be a nationwide conversation about it. And both sides of the political aisle are going to take issue with it. And both propaganda machines going to take issue and run with that. Look at the lib parents that are doing this, and the others are going to be like, oh my gosh, look at these, these radical conservatives that are trying to, contaminate my kid and all of this stuff. And I just say, you know what, there are going to be challenges with it, but that's just human nature. Whenever there's something new upon us, we don't like change. We didn't like any new invention that was widespread. We always resist change. And so I don't think this will be any different, but I do agree with you from the standpoint that, long term, I believe that this is going to be much to do about nothing. That people who decide to get their kids vaccinated will go, and people who decide not to. And I don't believe there's going to be this big outbreak because we have good technology. We understand how to provide remedies. And, now if there's some type of pandemic type of virus and stuff like that, then, but those only come once every 100 years. And I think it's safe to say we probably won't have one of those events, at least during our lifetimes. So.
I just, to me, it's like, where do we draw the line? Because, like, for example, you said, there's going to be a group that's going to be like, we want vaccinated only classrooms. Well, where do you draw the line of what's choice and what's not choice? Like, for example, for me, it's like, I understand why we make drugs illegal, but dude, I mean, we make other things not illegal. I mean, we let people drink, we let people smoke cigarettes. To me, it's like, shoot, if somebody wants to do crystal meth, let them do it. Just let them do it. Like, we create, like, if I want to do that, if I don't want to get vaccinated, that's my choice. That's your choice. So if you got the vaccination, then you should be cool with it. You shouldn't force me to believe the way you want to believe. Right? Because you might do things that I don't believe in, right? And I might do things that you don't believe in. That's the freedom of choice. So where does it end where it's like, you got to get vaccinated because those are the rules? Who said that? Like, what rules are what rules? You know what I mean, Len? So it's kind of almost like, bro, if you want to get vaccinated, get vaccinated. If you don't, you don't. Which is why I think it's so great what they do on cigarettes. Look, we all know that cigarette smoking is one of the number one. It's the easiest way to prevent not getting cancer, right? Lung cancer anyways, and all the other issues that come with cigarette tobacco smoking. But the Surgeon Journal warning is all over the box. It says, hey, look, by the way, you could do this, but if you do it, this could happen. So it's the same thing with vaccines. Don't take this, and if you don't, this could happen. So why can't we just operate on it? And the same thing, we are so butt backwards. And what I mean by that is it's like we have programs to give people needles, but then the heroin's illegal. It's like, what the heck are we doing here?
Yeah.
By the way, Len, here's some needles. They're clean. Go shoot up because we don't want you to get diseases from dirty needles. And we know you're going to do illegal drugs, but the drug you're shooting up is still illegal.
Yeah.
Well, bro, excuse me, for 25 cents or a nickel or a dime, any homeless person can find a dime or a nickel. We talk about a coin shortage. I guarantee right now, if the state of California, because they're wacky enough to do it, their needle program, all you got to do is put your height, your weight, right, on a little card, your height and your weight when you check in on a kiosk, right? They're good at automating stuff in California. You're homeless. All you got to do is put your height and weight on a kiosk. It'll scan you with your retina or whatever, and you deposit a quarter or a dime or a nickel, and it'll give you your needle with a shot of heroin in it based on your height and weight. And that's all you gotta do. Bro. That's all you gotta do in California.
That is,
and you will you're clean. Why even make it illegal? Just the state of California would make so much money, but again, they're so they'd be broke. They'd be broke. Bro, seriously,
I think
there you go. There's your solution.
I think the solution is exactly what the anti-smoking campaign did in the cigarette industry. You talked about smoking before. There were Surgeon General warnings on tobacco products and cigarettes in particular for the longest time. What really, I think, changed the tide, and I think this should be a case study for all illicit types of activities and drugs and stuff like that. I know we've gone on a bit of a bird walk, but when you make it uncool to smoke, when you make it uncool to do drugs, and you have effective campaigns where little kids start to recognize that it's not cool to smoke or it's not cool to do drugs, but in a way that's effective, like not the whole DARE programs, like say no to drugs and, all of that doesn't work. But having campaigns that are actually effective, created by young people to get that message across for the ones that haven't started yet, that's the only way that you're going to eradicate it. But anyway, I know we went on a different path, but I think it's all important. But choice is important.
The issue, 100%. And again, the issue is the government has too much involvement in vaccines. And therefore, when the government gets involved, you get crony capitalism, and vaccines are no longer developed for the good. They're developed for crony capitalism. Mm-hmm. So it's the money, man. Because big pharma is big pharma. Which kind of gets me into the eroding trust of the American dream, because vaccines is an issue of trust. We're seeing it now, but the trust is the American dream. And there was a philosophy and a formula that baby boomers told everybody, and that baby boomers told every one of us millennials and zennials that all we had to do was get good grades and go to school and get jobs and get a 401k, because we didn't need a pension anymore. That was only for them. They needed that. We didn't. And you would be okay. Life would be okay. And now what we're seeing here is that only 25% of Americans believe living standards can improve. That's bleak. Like, that's 1 in 4, right? Or a quarter. Mm-hmm. And 70% say hard work no longer guarantees success. And there's no doubt about this. You've got people coming out of school with the average debts like 60,000 plus, right? You've got the United States spending 60% of its GDP on entitlement programs in 2024, which is absolutely insanity. Which all that money's going to the baby boomers still, right? So of course the eroding trust is happening here, but healthcare is expensive. Food is expensive. Everything's expensive. Houses are expensive. Cars are expensive. Everything, I feel like, is a reverse tax to pay for the baby boomers. Len, what is your take on the eroding trust in the American dream? I never bought into it. I didn't buy into it. Fortunately, I didn't go to school. I I'm from the school of hard knocks, but you did, Len. You did, and it worked very successful for you. But what do you think is going on here? I don't think it all has to do with baby boomers as well. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that college campuses, colleges in general, are the most blood-sucking institutions. They're almost up there with pharmaceutical companies. They should actually almost be there in the same category as tobacco companies. But I'm curious to know where your take is on that, Len, because I don't think people have a shot with that formula anymore at all.
Yeah, it's interesting because I love baby boomers because my parents are baby boomers. However, I think that a lot of the policies that were put in place 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago, they're now coming to roost because of the generational transition that's happening. Right now, roughly 10,000 people are retiring every day. And so that's creating a strain on the different systems. So you have Social Security, which we talked about before. People were living less when these policies and these laws were made. So the belief was that you'd retire and within 2 to 5 years, you'd pass away. Well, if you live to 80, 90, 100 years old, you're putting an economic strain on the system. So I don't blame the baby boomers for living longer. Technology is a byproduct of that. I don't blame the baby boomers for taking advantage of cheaper housing. If we were alive during that era, we would have done the same thing. I believe that we have to, as a country, understand where this trend is going and find ways to buck that trend. However, here's the challenge with that. The challenge is that it goes against a capitalistic precept because of the fact that capitalism is really about driving profits. So if a house that was sold 20 years ago cost $200,000, that same house is $500,000 to $600,000. And so that house that's being sold by that person who was able to take advantage of that, they've got their $400,000 of equity. They're using that as the retirement plan because we were sold on the bill of goods that home ownership was the American dream. Check this out. I found a study, and it was people in their 30s that were both married and had a home from the 1950s through the 2000s. Check this out. So in the 1950s, 50% of that age bracket between 30 and 39 were both married and also owned a home. Fast forward to 2020, so we're halfway through this decade, 12% are married and own a home. And so for this last band, they had to use age 30 in particular instead of age 30 through 39. But what does that tell you? It tells you that home ownership is a thing of the past because of the fact that it's very difficult to qualify for a home. And when you couple that with the fact that back in the 50s, you could buy a home with a single income. But now, if you're not married and you're trying to get a home, you can just pretty much kiss that idea goodbye unless you want to live in an undeveloped rural place where, you have no access to movies, you have no access to, stores and supermarkets and things to enjoy yourself. Who in their 30s would want to live like that? So all of the places where people in their 30s want to live, they have access to all of these different places, and therefore it increases the demand. So therefore prices go up. So we're really in a crisis when you think about this transition because of the wants and needs of 30-year-olds are out of alignment financially with what it's going to take to be able to afford that type of a lifestyle. And if I were in my 30s, I know for sure that I would not have as positive of an outlook as I did in my 30s, based on where society was, based on where the cost of things were at that time. It's a significant difference. And so I really feel for young people because we've left them not an education, but an economic circumstance that's really problematic.
I just remember coming out of high school, and I was 18 my senior year in high school, so I started working. And I just remember coming out of high school, and then I remember working and then losing my job right out of high school because of the dot-com bubble, right? The dot-com bubble, and then the dot-com bubble happens, and then 9/11 happens, and I'm like, what the hell is happening right now? Like, this is crazy to me. And then I remember getting on my feet and working my off, working my tail off. Like, I was working my tail off, right? I remember I would get up at 4 a.m. to drive because my shift started at 6:30 in the morning. No, 7 in the morning. So I'd get up at 4 because I had to drive, an hour and a half to get to work. And I mean, I was able to buy a house, but I bought a house when I was in 2001. I was 21 years old. And I remember buying that house because I was in IT, and then I qualified for it. But again, I had to drive an hour and a half. It was in Hemet, California. Ooh, right? And I'm from San Diego. So that's like in the bum, right? But I could afford it. But still, it's in the middle of nowhere. I couldn't afford a house in San Diego. I couldn't even afford a house in Temecula. It was still too expensive for me at the time. But I just kind of almost feel like, and then 2008 happens, right? So then that happens and the rug gets pulled out from underneath you again. So I almost feel like if you're in that generation, you've experienced some pretty crazy times. You've experienced some pretty, and then for some people, COVID was a blessing, right? I mean, and then for some people, COVID was an absolute nightmare. So depending on how that went with you, I can just remember that 2008 was difficult for me. And 2001, 2000.com and all that stuff was difficult for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was difficult for me. I came out of it a winner because I bought a house, but I remember they were very difficult because I lost my job, my paychecks bounced and all that stuff. But I do remember COVID being easier for me, and I remember COVID being a blessing for me. And the only common denominator, Len, that I could say between those is the fact that I worked for somebody else in 2008 and I worked for somebody else in 2000. But I was an entrepreneur and had a business in 2000 and during COVID. And I was in the right place at the right time in that industry, in that business, and I did very well. But yeah, I could see why this becomes an issue because, and I really think a lot of it has to do with the fact that with the creation of 401k, 401k has really created a lot of problems. 401k opened up the doors for, retirement, obviously, yes, to be in the hands of people, but still shackled behind the corporate veil. So yes, you can manage your own retirement and do your own stuff, but it still has to be through a company. And that tax breaks for the company, right? So we just figure out a way to get the money back to corporate cronyism and back to the companies and back to the government. And then what ends up happening now is because of that, companies don't issue pensions anymore, which was really good for people, right? Because it gave you a vested interest to do your job really well, but then it gave that company a vested interest to make sure it did good for you, right? And now companies don't have to do that anymore because they don't do that anymore because it's 401k. Oh, it's your responsibility. But now that's opened up the door for BlackRock and State Street and all these big companies to own single-family residences. So we asked them, we said, why are single... And then it was something I seen the other day, an advertisement. It said, what's this? Oh, it's just BlackRock convincing you again that renting is better instead of owning, so that you secretly put your money in your 401k so that they could buy the house with your 401k money. Instead of you buying it, you rent it from them. And I went, whoa, so true. Mm-hmm. So true. We have allowed the biggest banks in the world to own all the houses in the world. So it's really almost like, what would you even call that? I mean, what would you even call that? Reverse socialism, reverse capitalistic socialism? I don't even know what you call that.
It's like because oligarchies, small.
Almost, right? Almost, right? Mm-hmm. Because without the advent of 401k, these companies don't get because that's what you're doing. You're putting your money in the 401k. These fund managers have your money. Mm-hmm. We talked about it earlier too. Starbucks is like bigger than most banks because of the money that people hold in their Starbucks account. Right? So think about the amount of money that these retirement companies, the big three, mm-hmm. State Street, Vanguard, and what's the other one? BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, and BlackRock. They're all the same. They all do the same thing, and they own tons because they're buying all the single family residences. Mm-hmm. So now you have big companies that own houses. Like I seen it the other day, Len. When you build like a track house development, mm-hmm. right? And then they put the signs up there and they have the models built, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. This is in Texas. It's like 10 minutes down the street from my house in Texas. It says homes for rent. Len, there's like 150 houses in this tract development, but they're not for sale. They're just for rent.
Whoa, that's a new one. Brand new. Whoa.
Yes.
Wow.
I will, next time I drive by it, I am going to
take a pic, man. You got to send that to me.
You got to see it, dude. And again, this is exactly what's happening. And you look at it and it goes hand, and you can't help but think, damn, the corporations are in on it with the government. They're all trying to do the same thing. They're all trying to own everything so that you own nothing. And you're financing them. We're financing them. We're giving them their money. Banks, investment banks, we give them my 401k. And the government is laughing all the way to the bank because they know they're going to get the money at the end of the day. So they're laughing their way to the bank. So it's just like, how did we get here? Of course there's an eroding trust in the American dream. You kind of almost look like it. I feel like for Xennials, they kind of almost look like it at this point. And just they watch The Matrix and they probably go like this, Len, just plug me in now.
Yeah.
Just plug me in now, baby. Mm-hmm. Just plug me in now. Yeah. You know what? Just plug me in now, baby, because I don't want to worry about it.
Yeah.
So I can kind of see that.
It's a very difficult fight for the younger generations that don't have a piece of that wealth, because it's so much more difficult to acquire now because you have a weakening dollar. And anytime you have a fiat currency that gets weaker over time, the buying power goes down and the difficulty to make purchases goes up. And so the only way to fight against that is to have either multiple jobs or to have a business that grows faster than all of those. Then it grows faster than the deterioration of your fiat currency, and it grows faster than the rate of inflation, which are both kind of the same thing, but stated in a different way. And so I understand that everybody who watches this podcast isn't necessarily entrepreneurial. And I don't quite frankly think everybody should be an entrepreneur. Business is hard, but I do believe that given the type of economy we have, you either need to have an extra stream of income through another job that you have, or you need to rethink how you decide to occupy space. What do I mean by that? Well, in our day, I don't want to sound like an old dude, but the general rule of thumb is you get married and you go buy a house, right? But it's so much more difficult to do that. So why not consider having a large enough house where it's still subdivided so there's some privacy, you get the square footage, you get the land to be able to appreciate, but now instead of having 2 incomes buy that home, you have 4 incomes buy that home. Things like that, I think people more and more are going to have to start thinking about, like, hey, maybe you're good friends at work and your spouses are good friends. So you say, hey, look, I like this area. Oh, I like this area. Go in with the 4 of your incomes and go buy a house. Maybe you've met in college and you're good buddies in college and you decide to extend your friendship beyond that, move to a different state because you both like that particular location. Hey, consider getting a house with the 4 of you, or maybe even the 6 of you, and get a larger house and have a compound, and maybe it has a casita and a lot of land. The only way people are going to be able to have the same type of a lifestyle is to be able to do something like that. Otherwise, they're screwed. They're screwed.
And I think that's a good point, Len, that you just meant there, because that's obviously the resilient factor. And that's something that we are looking at and we're doing within mine is like, and all, I mean, whether my kids cooperate or not is still to be seen, but it's like, we're doing compound and it's like everybody working, I know. And it's like, I guess that's maybe how you're going to rebuild the culture of family offices again, or family compounds, because back in the day, families, you had the estate, and families were on that estate, and everyone lived there for a long time, and everyone produced, and it went back into that family office, or that family bank account, or that family pool, so to speak, right? Pool, so to speak. So I definitely think you're going to see a resurgence in that. Just simply because it's a matter of fact at this point. It's a matter of survival at this point. Because, interestingly enough, I'm curious to know how that's all going to work out and how that's going to shape out. Because I do think that that you can't operate on the old rules anymore. Things are changing so fast again, and once was isn't anymore. And you can't really do that. You got to be smart. You got to be resilient. And I say this a lot. We say this a lot when we talk. But you must 100%. You have to have a side hustle. In today's world, you cannot just rely on the W-2. You've got to have a side hustle. You've got to go out there. You've got to make extra income, and go out there and make stuff happen. So with that being said, Len, I know we had one more thing to talk about, but we're kind of short here on time, dude. But I do want to spend a little bit more time on that. We're going to talk about S-Corps, LLCs, and tax strategy spotlight. Now, we're not tax preparers, but just a couple different things that we have on here that have worked and do work for people. And I'd love to have an at-length conversation with you on that next time we get together. But outside of that, very interested to see how things go this week with Spirit and how things unfold here. Len, you got any closing thoughts on anything before we wrap up today?
Well, hopefully the folks will tune in to our next episode, because we're not coming to you from the perspective of tax preparers, but we are coming to you from the perspective of business owners that have, an LLC and have had S Corps and have operated them. So we'll share with you what has worked for us. So we're not necessarily going to be giving you advice. So definitely tune back in. And there's so many things that are happening in our country right now. So we want to stay on top of that. We also want to always give you financial perspectives and health related perspectives. And so that's what you're going to expect on our channel here. And so we're going to continue to grow. As long as you keep tuning in, we're going to keep showing up, and we are going to show up regardless, because of the fact that we enjoy what we do. We enjoy the conversations, and it's great to have opposing opinions and still be able to eat lunch with each other, hang out, and not hold each other hostage for our opposing views. And so with that being said, hey, Chris, another great episode. Is always good connecting with you, sir. And until next time, for those of you, please subscribe, and feel free to reach out and have comments if you want to share some of your thoughts and opinions. That being said, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Appreciate that.
Conversation has given you clarity on your next steps. Please share this episode with someone who's walking the same path. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss future episodes. And remember, planning ahead isn't just prudent, it's an act of care. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time on The Family Office.